I never thought of myself as an intellectual. I never had a great education. And I really didn't start to do anything at all as a writer until I was about 35, when I started to write radio shows. And then my father was a writer, and he was on Fleet Street for a time. And I wanted him to be proud of me, so I thought I'll write a novel. Once you've written a novel, you're called a writer, not a scriptwriter. So I wrote a book called Goon, which became a bestseller, and which the first copy in the first edition is buried with him in Australia.
I'm writing a novel called Cocoon, and in it I experiment with dimensionalism. I have a chap lying on the grass, an Irishman. He's lying down on the book like this. Holy Christ, he said. What are these things then? What are these things then? They're your legs. Legs? Legs? These? Whose legs? Well, they're your legs, I said in my capacity as author. Author? Author? Did you write these legs? Yes, I did, I said. Well, I don't like them. Holy shit, I don't like these legs at all. He said, did you write your legs? I said, no. He said, you didn't write your legs. Oh, no. You got a good leg writer to write your legs, and then you write this pair of crappy old legs for me like this. So I don't like it.
He had a completely original mind, I think, which there are very few people who have that sort of thing. It was partly because he had no formal education, I think. He had no ideas which had been pumped into him by the system, so that most of the things he said were what he himself thought and conclusions which he had reached himself.
He thinks he's the last man alive who speaks the truth. Daily Express.
When my children were young, I thought I'd like to do something more than just buy them something with money. I'd actually manufacture something. So I wrote a book of poems called, I think it was called Silly Verse for Kids. And somehow or other it got published.
I never felt finer, said the King of China, sitting down to dine. He fell down dead. He died, he did. It was only 9:30. Now, you can read this at 9:45 as well. It sounds the same.
Soppy, wet, warm, affectionate, strange, dead, you know. God, I hate him.
The real highlight of my career was my children. I had to bring my first 3 children up on my own because there was a divorce. And I brought them up with the aid of an au pair. The au pair was for me. And wonderful experience bringing these 3 children up. All their bath times, fairy stories, holidays, playing in the garden, playing in the sandpit, playing in the stream, the tree house, all that. It was wonderful.
That does seem to be the one thing that when he's being negative about the whole world and people and everything, he still is warm and affectionate about his children, and I think probably that's what saved him from, you know, going into a sort of total catatonic gloom forever and ever.
Well, I know they love me very much, and that's about the biggest thing I can say about my life and being a success. I'm in a state of mourning over the passing of my children from childhood to adulthood. I keep all their little toys and things that they used to have when they were young, got their shoes, little slippers and things like that. Sentimental fool, I suppose, what they called you, yeah? In my romantic essence, I suppose I'd like to be buried in Ireland. Most of all, I'd like to have had a family tomb where they're all buried together, but they've split all over the earth. Some are buried in India, some in Australia. I suppose I'll be buried in England, yeah. Anywhere but Golders Green.
He seems to have a complete lack of roots and identity and culture. I know he was born in India and sort of goes on a lot about his Irishness, but is a very un-Irish person and very sort of English in a very old-fashioned way. I mean, he still has that weird sort of respect for the English establishment and stuff, but when he's given the chance, rants about them as well.
I was brought up as a Catholic, brought up by the nuns and brought down by the Jesuits, I think. And I was a very religious boy, and I believed very, very much in Jesus, and I was very concerned for him. In fact, I wrote a poem when I was about 8, a religious poem to him. But whereas I find it hard now to believe that there's a God.
I think of Spike as an Irishman and also as a Irish Catholic, which I think is very strong in his humour.
Tell me, is he a miner?
No, he's 27.
No, I mean, is he a coal miner?
No, he's a wog. He doesn't come off, you see.
Certainly didn't come off that time. Tell me, why of all people did you choose him to eat whales?
Oh, they'll eat anything, you see.
I see. Of course, the rest of them are all Welsh, of course.
Oh, no, he's Irish.
He's Irish?
Uh-huh.
What about him?
Oh, he's Jewish.
Strange. He doesn't look Jewish. Are you Jewish?
No, it's bad enough being Welsh.
He told a lot of Irish jokes, well, which we now call anti-Irish jokes, which I used to always be very unhappy with. And he was also very pro the British Army, which didn't sit at all easy with me. And he was also pro-conscription. I remember an interview he did with Parkinson where he ranted all about conscription should be compulsory, which I can't think of anything more un-Irish than that, really. But the surrealism and the anarchic elements in his humour were, I think, profoundly Irish.
But the bank manager, he's the one I miss most because he's the one I'm always arguing with. He's going to miss me because I'm going to leave an overdraft.
Oh, what a terrible tragedy it all was.
I think his humour is quite from another generation, maybe 2 generations ago. And old-fashioned, out of date, really. Sorry, Spike. God rest him.
Well, I think he'll be remembered mainly because of his books, because people obviously forget about his plays and TV programs and everything. But I think his memoirs of his wartime days will be read as a history of what it was like to be an ordinary private soldier in the Second World War.
Some of my books I've liked. I've liked the fact that people have come to me and said that they thought they were funny. And that's been a pleasure. That sort of touches your ego coming forward. You have to face up to the fact that when you die, that's it, chum. I would much rather I did believe in God and I did believe that all this jazz was on, you know, heavenly music and all that stuff. I don't want to call great names into being, but I feel very much in sympathy with Van Gogh, who I think was a manic depressive. And it certainly does make you, well, it seemed to have made me creative, but at a cost.
I think he tries to be very honest, unusually so for an entertainer in his dealings with the world. It's quite unusual for somebody to talk so frankly about being a manic depressive. Most people would try and hide it, I think. And he's done a lot, I think, for manic depressives by talking about it.
I'm England's top loony. #1 kid.
And it's, you know, he's a barrel of contradictions, really, isn't he?
I think there is a small group of people whom I would count myself, who I would call conservative Christian anarchists. And Spike was a member of that party, I think. So although his humour was very anarchic, he was also a deeply conservative man.
I know straight away that those creeps at the BBC, the moment I die, they will play an excerpt from Q on the night of my death. That's bound to come. They're so predictable. Not while you're alive, when you could really enjoy it. When you're dead, yes. Yes, and it'll end up with that line, Spike Milligan, who died today. I can hear them saying it.